Greetings, I'm Demonac, and it's arena time. Alright, time for me to continue to be bad at this deck, which I think is sort of a mediocre deck to start with. It has some kind of cool combos, but I think in addition to me having a really hard time with the kind of messed up in the head decisions I have to make, I think that's being compounded by not drawing things in the right order, because I think in order to work it kind of needs too much of a good draw. You know, it's not that I'm getting bad draws, like statistically unlikely to be so bad. I might actually keep this with the Nerubian Egg, but no, it's going to be too slow. Yeah, when I say I think I'm getting bad draws here, it's not that I'm getting worse than average draws for the deck. It's that I think the deck is just not likely to give the kind of draws that it needs to win. Which means that the deck is not chosen especially well necessarily. That could go bad. Usually pretty safe with the Nerubian Egg. It might get silenced, but then it ate a silence. It could be worse. I didn't do enough to get the goo. Okay. Ow. Boy, these guys are not working out the way they're supposed to. You know what? I think I'm just going to play him without the bonus. Without the combo. He's a 3/3. Right now he stomps this thing, or hopefully it takes some effort to get rid of him. She can't just kill him for free. She'd have to spend a card, or a whole bunch of mana, or both. On the other hand, I might be playing into her. If she has a Frostbolt she was saving, now she can Frostbolt to buff him and hit me for more damage, but then he ate a Frostbolt. Fireball him, get this up to a 3/3, or Fireball me, get this up to a 3/3 and kill him? I don't know. That's possible. Water Elemental, not great for me. Ow. Killing that would get my guy into Fireball range, which is not great. Although I could stealth him. I could backstab this. Why would I backstab? No, I was thinking backstab that and then do the Ringleader. He'll get his ass kicked. But I could kill this and then stealth him, and then only if she has an AoE could she auto-kill him. That's not bad.
Hey, lights out.
That is like what she's for. Should I backstab this anyway? Because I can't backstab it once it takes any damage. That is a mess. But next turn I can make the Assassin's Blade. That plus one of these guys ought to be able to take it out, even if freezing myself kind of sucks. Or he might just hit me and then I'm frozen, and that also sucks. Everything sucks. Everything sucks. In case you haven't noticed, I'm pretty negative when playing Hearthstone. So I could play this, but since I'm frozen, it's not going to do me much good. My stuff's all going to get their asses kicked trying to take this out, but I guess we're just going to spam out things.
Yeah,
I'm frozen, so I can't make the dagger and finish that, so I might as well
lights out.
hit it before he dies. And Spider Tank. I have a bunch of stuff out. You can shoot this, or you can hit this and shoot it. You can't do both. And you can't freeze me and freeze all my guys with just this. You'd have to use spells. I don't know. It's not looking great, although I do have Fatness in my hand.
What to do?
Something for her to save a Polymorph for. She did spend a Fireball. No, she didn't. I made that up. I'm confusing myself with my hypothetical scenarios and thinking it happened. No, she did spend a Fireball. That's right. I was imagining that. Spend a fireball killing a 4/4 battlecry creature that already used it. So that's literally not that bad, unless it means that she has a handful of fireballs and polymorphs. That would be bad. She's got the same card back as I do. She's confident enough to go through the heroics.
What to do? What to do?
Which isn't necessarily the highest bar. I'm sure you could just look up online how to get through them if you are having trouble. Steam-powered Yeti. Use of Sergeant, buff that, and hit me. Well, I'm frozen again, which is not great, but I'm going to do some stuff. I've taken a lot of damage, but I can get out the Glyphis. Now I need to make sure a lot of her stuff is dead if I'm doing that. These two aren't enough to kill that, unfortunately. So this is all going to work out horribly. I would have to spend my good thing killing that. And one of the other ones. And just kill this guy to get rid of his stupid freezingness. But it would leave her with this against my egg and Boulder Fist. And if she AoEs, I at least get a 4/4 out of it. Actually, that's not true. If she kills it with him, and then AoE, and then, like, blizzards or something, that would be obnoxious. Whatever, we're going to do this anyway. I got a spare part. Yay. Whirling Blades. That is actually good. +1 attack. It's not one of the best ones necessarily, but it's going to work out really well because my egg will be able to do something. Like, roll over there and commit suicide to get me a 4/4. Polymorph! See that coming. Ow. She has more cards and a lot more hit points. But I can start hitting her in the face, which is good. Let's do this. Egg aside. Stab. And heal myself a bit, because, face it, I'm getting pretty low. This guy, I can hold off on playing him, because, of course, Taunt does work right away. You need to be able to attack to be able to interfere with my opponent's attack plans. She could, of course, Flame Strike my garbage, which, on the surface, doesn't look that worthwhile. It's like a 4/4 to 2/1 with no abilities. But I have one card in my hand, and she has lots of cards. If she Flame Strikes now, that would probably seal the deal, unless I had a sprint coming, which I don't. Flame Strike! No, it is a secret. That's right, you can kill him for, like, no cards. It's not like I'm putting any pressure on you. Yeah. Vanish. That is not especially helpful. See what happens when I attack. Vaporize. Wow, you vaporized him. Okay. Fortunately, I'm doing so bad that is actually bad for me. If I was doing half decently at all, the fact that she wasted a vaporize on a 4/4 with no abilities would be like, yay! But I am not doing well enough to say that. That was actually quite negative for me. Because I do have another one of these Assassin's Blades. So, I mean, I could do a lot of damage just stabbing her in the face, but I don't know. Even if I drew like an oil right now, even if this guy survives, and I drew an oil, I don't have anything I could cast with the oil. The Vanish would defeat the purpose. And Mega Secrets. Awesome. So whatever spells I cast are going to get countered or something anyway. Molten Giant. That's pretty good. Let's attack. Let's see what we got. Ice Barrier. Okay. The problem is, if I play the Molten Giant, if that's a mirror entity, I'm, like, screwed. I could Vanish, but she'll get her Molten Giant back, although I guess I can play mine cheaper than she can. Oh, man. I don't have much choice. I gotta do it. Yes.
Here we go.
I mean, hers wouldn't be able to hit me without getting rid of this guy first, but that would have been miserable if that's what it was. So I'm glad it's not. It does probably mean that it's a counter spell or a spellbender that'll prevent me from vanishing, for example. Oh well. Could also be an ice block. Ice block is good. I've already tested for Vaporize with him. It's not that. Explosive Sheep. Such an awesome card for Mage. Guess I'm leaving that alive. I don't think there's any way that killing it benefits me. Certainly not on my turn when it might get duplicated. Tinker's Sharpsword Oil. Wow, I wish I had a spell I could cast along with that.
Locked on.
Here we go.
I'm going to save it in the hopes that I still have a minion left alive next round, and I draw a spell that is more useful than Vanish to cast with this. It doesn't have to be a spell, actually. It's probably going to get countered anyway. Fireball. Ooh. That was unfortunate. Also unfortunate. Also not the best target for Vanish. Cold Blood! This is an awesome hand of uselessness. Good job, deck. I'd be very close to dead if that goes on, but vanishing him isn't going to really help my situation.
Here we go.
I'm gonna get a spell's gonna get countered, or it's an ice block, or this run is pretty dead. Wow, that thing's very effective against my deck too. I'm pretty reliant on weapons, and the mini, like Water Elemental, is a death machine. Oh, and he's got taunt. Awesome. Mechanical Yeti. So I can go Vanish Yeti. Vanish will probably be countered. I'm going to be so dead anyway, I'm going to risk the Vanish being countered. Even though it actually sucks against this anyway because he can come back out. Like, no good comes from anything ever. I'm just so boned. Like, that is a weak-ass play, but what am I going to do? Never have a minion alive, because she's going to play Buddy, kill Liss with a Fire Blast. It has barely slowed her at all, unless she's ready to kill me, in which case she could hit me with it. No, it makes a lot of sense to just kill him. I get a spare part I can't use. Although, that could be a Spellbender, which I could trigger off with this, except that I don't want to give one of my buffs to a Spellbender. Frostwolf Warlord. Awesome. It doesn't matter because I'm dead. I don't even have 2 uses on my weapon if I was going to Sharp Sword now. So stupid. Wow, it's not a Spellbender. Weird.
Here we go.
So duplicate? I guess I never killed one of her guys to find out. She was hoping I would kill the sheep or something, but she had a plan for the sheep anyway. Oh, it doesn't matter. It would not like I had any chance in the last 5 turns or so. Yay. Alright, let's see what I got. pressing, I don't know. So, some of my gold back. You get a Goblins pack. Let's see who... Randomly get a legendary to salvage the run. Nope. Oh, it's my second Metal Tooth Leaper, so I can now do annoying hunter stuff, I guess. And so there's one game left. I did have someone was requesting that I just like go through a whole bunch of the Goblins versus Gnomes cards and talk about my thoughts on them, which is always a possibility. So maybe I'll just do that. So, all sets, Goblins versus Gnomes, and let's take a look. So I mentioned a lot of cards in passing, but I go crafting mode so I can actually see all of them. So the Robo-Cub for the Druids is, as I mentioned before, I think he's very good in the early game. Overall, he's probably one of the weaker ones in terms of the 2-mana class mechs, because they're all really good. We know a 2/2 taunt for 2 sucks, because we don't play that stupid orc, but 2/2 taunt for 2 with a good keyword, and is actually either a 3/2 taunt or a 2/3, which means you can tailor him to whatever your opponents put out. If your opponent puts out like a 2/2 or a 2/1 early in the game, you give him the extra health, and he can potentially win that fight. Whereas if your opponent is slow to put anything out, or alternatively, if they put out something as a 2/3, you can make him a 3/2 so he can counter that. He's pretty cool that way. Grove Tender, I'm sure that pros will find a use for this or something. I'm not a huge fan of her. Right? She's a 2/4 for 3, which is okay stats. She gives each player a mana crystal, or each player draws a card. So whatever you get, you're giving to your opponent. If it's a card, technically you get the benefit from it first, but they're getting the benefit from it for free, and like they'll have all their mana to cast that card, whereas you would have 3 less mana to cast that card. So there's a lot of potential drawback there. I guess the idea of having a milling deck where everyone gets cards, she helps out with that a little bit. And it technically is worth noting, if she gives each player a mana crystal, that's not an empty mana crystal. So she actually, if you choose the mana option, she only costs 2 for a 2/4. But you're accelerating the whole game in a weird way. The Druid of the Fang is pretty interesting, right? 4/4 for 5, so he sucks. He's got 4/4 for 5 that does nothing, especially. Except, if you have a beast, then you're getting a 7/7 for 5, which is kind of the opposite of sucks. A 7/7 for 5 with no drawback if you can trigger his battle cry. And the trick is, they did change it so that the Druid of the Claw now counts as a beast, whichever way you pick, the bear or cat. He's a beast either way. Malorn is a beast. I mean, there are lots of decent beasts you can play, so it's interesting that way. This Dark Whispers thing is really freaky, right? You either get 5 1/1s for 6 mana, or give a single minion +5/+5 and taunt. So that's a huge buff to put on one minion. It is a little expensive compared to Blessing of Kings, but on the other hand, it's even slightly bigger and with taunt. The 5 Wisps could definitely go a little bit crazy if you can keep them alive for 1 turn, so that you could then do your roar and just win. That would be pretty good. If they trigger the Hobgoblin, which I'm not sure, but I mean they have 1 attack, right? If you had the Hobgoblin out, and if he counts for these, then you'd get 5 3/3s. Crazy Hobgoblinness. The Recycle is interesting, right? You got to compare this to like Assassinate, right? You pay 6 mana, you get rid of an enemy minion. It's weird because if it was something they needed for a combo, or if it was like a legend or whatever, they will still have it in their deck. They can draw it again. So if it was something that was particularly screwing you, it can come back. But on the other hand, this isn't killing them, so it doesn't trigger death rattles. So in the current environment, this is Assassinate that ignores their death rattle, and that's pretty good. Mech Bear Cat is pretty cool. I played around with him a little bit. I don't know the best way, but I mean, I stuck him in my standard druidy sort of play with a whole bunch of things that you want to give taunt to, and a whole bunch of things that give taunt, right? He's a 7/6 for 6, which is fine. He's a mech, which is good for various things. Every time he takes damage, he gives you a spare part card, which some spare parts are pretty good. And I mean, there's one of them is like return a thing to your hand. If he took damage a few times, you could then like attack with him and then return him to your hand and replay him. He's very interesting. I don't know if he's super amazing, but he's cool. Malorn is... I don't think he's like the best legendary. 9/7 for 7 is fine. He's a beast. He's got that keyword going on for you. His death rattle is just he shuffles himself back into your deck. So he does help against deck death. He helps against fatigue. If the point is to have a functional druid mill deck, I'm sure he's helping there. He's fat and like not bad, but overall you're not really getting card advantage from him going back into your deck. Although it is helping you to stack your late game with more 9/7 for 7 fatties. That's a plus. And Tree of Life is a messed up card, right? Restore all characters to full health. At first you look at this and you're like, why does that cost 9 mana? Full heal everything? I don't know if you noticed, but Priest got like a Wrath of God that mostly kills everything most of the time. And it only costs 6. Why is it... Oh, it says all characters. This heals both heroes back to full, except is like resetting the game, except everyone has max mana. That's a big change. If your deck is all about fat, if you can just outlast your opponent's rush long enough to play this, their deck's sitting there petering out, or their warlock is still getting cards, but he's going to draw himself to death, and you're like, full health for everyone! I don't mean draw himself to death from the 2 life. I mean draw himself to death from running out of cards. Like, that's pretty sick. So the Hunter, the Metaltooth Leaper is pretty interesting. Like a 3/3 for 3, give your other mechs +2 attack. Like, it is a mech, which is good. +2 attack. It doesn't say until end of turn or anything. I think you just permanently give all your other mechs +2 attack, which is pretty sweet. If you have even 2 mechs out, you get a 3/3 for 3, and you give them each +2 attack. That's pretty strong. The Glaive Zuka, pretty neat. Like 2 attack, 2 hit weapon is not a death machine, but the Battle Cry giving a minion immediately +1 attack is handy. Is it awesome? I don't know. It's a common weapon. It's good that they have a common weapon now instead of having to rely on rare stuff. But I don't know. It has some potential for rushy sort of early game control shenanigans and rushdown. Call Pet is weird. Like, the Hunter already has a lot of cheap cards that basically just draw another card. So this is another one of those that help you cycle through your deck faster. It's a bit more specific, because if you don't have beasts, then it's really just like 2 mana draw a card. If your deck has a ton of beasts, though, this could potentially let you go through your deck faster and innervate yourself, right? If you have 4 mana, you pay 2 for this and draw a beast that costs 6, like the 6/5 lion, you can play it. That makes a crazy play if it works out for you. You could also draw a cheap beast and just play it for free, which wouldn't be horrible. Feigned Death is one of the ones that's going to be crazy. It triggers all the death rattles on your minions. I don't actually know yet. Wow. The hardest part about doing a Feigned Death convincingly is learning how to make the right smell. It takes a lot of commitment. But anyway, so I don't actually know a really important detail about this card. It says it triggers the death rattles on all your minions. I'm assuming that means that they lose their death rattle, that you used up all their death rattles, which is still very powerful. You get to use all their death rattles without them dying. Cool. If for some reason this activated all their death rattles, but they still had death rattle, then it would be like insanely ridiculous, which is why I don't think it works that way. So Steamweedle Sniper, he's pretty awesome, right? He's a 2/3 for 2, so he's already good. And now your Hunter, now your pay 2 mana, do 2 damage power can also target minions. So your Hunter turned into a better mage, as long as he's alive. Some people are like, that's insane! And then other people are like, well, doesn't the priest have 2 different ways to do that? Yes. This way is a minion with 3 health. It's easier to get rid of than the priest ones. Although the priest ones have more drawback, this doesn't have any drawback, so he's very good. Cobra Shot I am not that fond of, right? Hunters have a lot of ways to kill minions. To me, 5 mana to do 3 damage to a minion. It does flat 3 mana to a minion. There's no randomness. There's no stupid. It's not going to fail or something. But you're paying 5 mana to do 3 damage, and then it does 3 damage to the enemy hero, which is fine. That's not like a huge amount of damage to the enemy hero, and that's not like a hugely effective minion killing card for 5 mana. To me, it just seems kind of half-assed. I'd just play with lots of like Deadly Shot and other stuff. We have King of the Beasts. He acts kind of like you might think a legendary or something would act. He's not a legendary. He's pretty regular. Of course, he's not a legendary because he's not like that amazing. But 2/6 for 5 with taunt, and then he gets +1 attack for each other beast you have. So he is another combo with the hounds. He's otherwise just kind of a mediocre sort of beast. Now, Gazrilla here is a pretty kick-ass legend, potentially. 6/9 for 7, so it's got a high enough attack to kill almost any minion, and it's got it's very tough, which is excellent. And then it's a doubling effect. Whenever it takes damage, double its attack. Now, as a hunter, you don't have a whole lot of built-in ways to damage your own minions. It's not that convenient. Although if you had a Steam Weedle sniper out, you could start shooting your own guy. I shoot my own man. You hit him once, his attack is 12. If he takes damage twice, his attack is like 24. That's without any other buffs being involved. This thing is gonna... If it doesn't die right away, it's likely to end the game very soon. Again, it's not necessarily that easy to get it going, but I think it's very solid. It's also a beast, obviously, so you get whatever other advantages you have. But 7 mana, 6/9, like that's a good legendary. I would be happy with that as a potential kill. So the mage stuff, we know I like the flame cannon. Is it my favorite spell ever? No. Is it that exciting? Not really, but it's a pretty darn good option. It's 2 mana for 4 damage to a minion only. If they only have 1 minion, you blow up their minion. That just works. Like, if you have 4 mana, you can kill a 5 hit point minion. If that's their only minion, it's doomed, because you're a mage. But, yeah, it's very good. You can control this randomness. This randomness is a drawback that's there to be controlled. You will often be able to eliminate enough enemy forces to make this do what you want, so that's cool. The unstable portal is extremely random. I like it a lot better than the Hunter's like Beast one, even though this doesn't make things as much cheaper and you have no idea what you're going to get. But this, yeah, it adds a random minion to a hand. So it's not drawing you a card. It's not getting you through your deck faster. It is just inventing a new card at any friggin' minion in the game, basically. And to make up for the fact that you have no control over it, it is going to cost slightly less than what you paid for this card. It's going to be slightly cheaper than if you had not played this card. So even if you played this second turn, you just 2 mana, you cast Unstable Portal. If you drew a minion that cost 3 or less, you could play it right away for free. That's pretty good, or you can hang on to it and play it whenever it makes sense. If you get something expensive with this, that can lead to a really awesome early game play, even if it's not the same turn. The Snow Chugger is really good. Like I said that I wasn't so sold on the Druids like 2 mana mech. I guess the Hunter doesn't have a 2 mana mech. They got the 3 mana one instead. And then Steam Weedle Sniper guy, who is not a mech. The Snow Chugger is pretty awesome. Because 2/3 for 2 mana is, perfectly reasonable. If this suicides, if this just gets in a trade with anything that would survive, that thing will not get to attack. So already that's pretty useful. But this doubles the number of good for their cost mage minions that you can put in your deck that can potentially lock down a weapon using class. If you can just keep hitting that rogue or paladin or hunter or warrior or whatever, if you can just keep hitting him in the head with the snow chugger or water elementals and or duplicate either of those, you can potentially lock them down and totally screw up their game. So this is good. The Soot Spewer is another good mech. I mean, he's just a bigger, like, kobold spellcaster guy. I like a 3/3 for 3 with +1 spell damage a lot better than the 2/2 for 2. Although, it also means you can play with both, because he's still cheap enough that he has that effect that, like, you can play him as an add-on to your spell. You play Soot Spewer Flame Strike. Soot Spewer Cone of Cold for 2 instead of 1. Soot Spewer and Arcane Blast for 2. As soon as Arcane Blast does 2 damage, it is a powerful spell. At 1 damage, I find it kind of weak-ass. But if this allows you to play with enough spell damage, enough inexpensive spell damage in your deck, it would probably make it worth playing with Arcane Blasts. It would be very tempting. This Echo of Medivh, in Constructed, I ran into a guy who owned me with this. Although it was very close. There was a chance I could have gotten through, but no. Stupid mage. He did mostly nothing the whole game. His entire deck was based on the idea that once he gets low, Medivh's Echo haunts Karjan, eternally cheating at chess and Hearthstone. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense with this card, and if you played World of Warcraft at the right time and you went through that, don't worry about it. This thing though, it takes whatever friendly minions you have, it copies each of them and gives you that in your hand. So you're doubling the number of minions that you have if you can cast them. I mean, you still have to cast them, but still, you're getting great card advantage out of it. It costs 4, but that's okay. You start comparing it to Duplicate. Duplicate costs 3 and it's harder to control. This does exactly. Gives you an extra copy of each one. This stupid mage I played against, his deck was Molten Giants. He does a bunch of card drawing and just sits around and sort of slows your roll by blowing up some of your stuff. And then when he gets low, he goes Molten, Echo of Medivh, Molten, play something to give them taunt. He now has 4 8/8s out there. At least 2 of which have taunt. And, I don't know, you could do stuff with the Blast Mage as well. Look at this guy. He's a 5/4 for 4. So that's good. That's like, we like the Yeti stats better. We like the 4/5. But even then, I don't know. The environment may have changed a little. The Yeti hasn't been feeling quite as strong lately because there's so much strong early game stuff. It always feels like 2 things can take him out. Or 1 thing with a little help. This guy, he's a 5/4 for 4. It's good. And if you have any mech in play when you play him, he does 4 points of, like, knife throwing. He does 4 points of damage randomly split amongst all enemies. So he can't hit friendlies. He's random, but he's not, like, batshit crazy random. He's just, like, smart random. 5/4 for 4 and a +1 damage arcane missile. That's what you're getting when you play him. That is amazing for one thing. If you just have to get a mech out there, and even if you don't, he's still a decent size. The wee spell stopper is interesting, right? She's like taunt for spells. She doesn't have taunt, but she's a 2/5 for 4, and she makes the adjacent minions untargetable by spells and hero powers. They're still all vulnerable to battle cries, but that is pretty effective. But it just, I don't know what would make you want to play with that in your deck specifically. I don't know what exactly that fits with. But it is a very interesting ability. I'm glad they made the card. The Flame Leviathan is pretty awesome. Okay, it's a 7/7 for 7. It's a mech, whoop-de-doo. What does it do? Nothing. Except, it does nothing when it's in play, but just drawing this does 2 damage to all characters. So, if you have kind of a slower mage deck, and you're sitting around drawing cards is more what it's about, that is fascinating. It's just like, whenever you draw this, boom, it just does 2 damage to everything. If you had your explosive sheep out, 4 damage to everything, because the sheep's gonna die. Like, this thing is very, very cool. If it wasn't class-specific, it's one of those things you might start seeing in way too many decks, so it's good that it's class-specific. Is everyone going to play it? I don't know, because you don't control when it goes off. I mean, if your mage is more rush-like or has a lot of fragile minions, you're not going to want this, because you could hurt your own cause, but it is powerful either way. Then Paladin, Seal of Light is interesting. I remember people were saying that, like, Blessing of Light or whatever, the 2 mana gain 6 health thing is like RIP. Which is possible. Because this, yeah, for 2 mana, you restore 4 health to your hero only, so you can't heal minions with this. But instead of that extra 2 health you would have got from the other stupid spell, you get +2 attack this turn. So don't think of it as a health first. This is 2 mana, get +2 attack. So basically it's like 2 mana for a single weapon strike, or to enlarge your existing weapon strike, like the warrior spell. So it's basically, it's letting you kill something small for 2 mana, and happens to also give you 4 health, which is pretty handy. And the fact that it does not conflict with your weapons. If you have a weapon, you can just make that weapon bigger. The 4 health will help to absorb the impact if you have to hit something big with it. The Shielded Minibot, I mean, a 2/2 mech with Divine Shield. If he wasn't a mech, I'd actually say he's pretty crummy. I mean, we know he's like way worse than the 2/2 guy who gives Divine Shield to something else. It's just like the Whirlwind thing. You don't want to pay for a minion that has Whirlwind built in. Most of the time, at least prior to this expansion, most of the time they were just not as good because Whirlwind was valued so highly in terms of points, cost, mana ratio type stuff. You'd rather play one card that gives Whirlwind to another card that was already amazing without Whirlwind. And now you have like a super double amazing thing. But the Minibot, because it's a mech, mechs are good. Like there's so much stuff that gives you synergy with mechs that I could see this guy having some value. And you're still a paladin, you have a lot of things that buff minions. Having a guy who, like, if you liked the 1/1 stupid bubble girl, I still don't like her, right? The 1/1 whatever who comes with a bubble for 1 mana. Whoop-de-doo. I like this guy way more than her because he does twice as much damage. That if you're gonna pay for your bubble, you might as well have a guy that can do some damage. And then he, just like her, if you buff him, he becomes much better. The Coghammer is kind of interesting. I mean, Paladins already have really good weapons. It's hard to compete with. Really good weapons. I mostly mean the one, but no, they have the one that gives +1/+1 to your stuff. It's not a good weapon at fighting, but it's pretty awesome at buffing your army. And of course, it goes well with Seal of Light because you can turn that 1 attack into 3 if you need to. The Coghammer, though, you pay 3, you get a 2 attack weapon with 3 uses, which is a pretty good number of uses. And when it comes into play, it immediately gives a random friendly minion both Divine Shield and Taunt. So it turns whatever you have into an Annoyatron. Except if you only have 1 minion, it's not random. If you go Yeti and then next turn Coghammer, guess what? You have a Divine Shield Taunt Yeti to smash something with. So that kind of control, it's just like the mage spell. It's like the defensive version of the flame cannon, right? If you can control the situation. You play this when you have 1 minion out, 1 good minion is now in 1 super minion. Muster for battle. This thing is cool. Okay, this totally replaces that crappy 1/4 weapon for 1, which I wasn't too fond of anyway. If you had any combos though, like if you like playing with Agent Smith to give it +2 attack, and you're like, haha, it has 4 uses. Well, that works pretty well with the Coghammer's 3 uses, and not being a 1 attack weapon. But it also works pretty well with this, because you pay 3 mana, you get your 4 use weapon, it only hits for 1, but whatever, that's worst case, like, say you're just not doing so well, you can still hit your opponent for 4 damage over 4 turns. That's not great, but you're getting 4 damage for your 3 mana, and 3 1/1s. And there are so many ways you can use just getting 3 1/1s for 3 mana. And you get a weapon. This thing is cool. Is it the best card ever? Nah. But I think this is a pretty strong card. I think we're going to see people mess around with that. Just this and like Direwolf Alphas. This and your Stormwind Champion. And like it just works out well. This and Knife Juggler. Ugh. That's kind of scary, actually. We have Scarlet Purifier. He's the 4/3 for 3. He does 2 damage to all minions with Death Rattle, which you could use to pop your own eggs. Most of the time, I don't think it's going to be worth blowing up your own Death Rattle things. Like, you'd rather them be alive, usually, but you can use them as a hoser for Death Rattle, sort of, except it's a weird way to hose Death Rattle by triggering their Death Rattles. It could potentially backfire, too, but at least he's a decent size for his cost. Bolvar Fordragon is another one taking advantage of the fact that as a computer CCG, you can do all this, like, in-your-hand stuff without revealing it to your opponent. But yeah, so he's a 1/7 for 5. As long as he's in your hand, his attack goes up by 1 every time a friendly minion dies. That makes him just really, really strange, honestly. If you get him in your hand early, and then you don't play him for a while, then he might come out very big. Or if you get him in your hand early, and you just manage to get 3 or 4 minions killed, he could come out as a pretty large guy for 5 mana, although he's strange. If you draw him late in the game, he kind of sucks, though. Like, he's a 1/7 for 5. If you drew him late in the game, maybe you could hang on to him and get a couple of minions killed, but it's probably not going to work out that well. So he's very strange. Way worse than, like, his other paladin friend. Anyway, this thing is strange, too. You got a 6/3 mech for 5. It is a fairly large mech. It has a huge attack, right, for its cost. And it does have a defensive power. Its defensive thing is whenever you summon a mech, it gets Divine Shield. So, man, it gets strange. Like, you don't want to play him when you have 5 mana. You want to play him when you have 5 mana plus the cost of your next mech. If you play Cobalt Guardian and then Shielded Minibot, now they both have a shield. Because he gets one, and then you want to be able to... He does have potential to be like an engine of destruction, right? You hit an opposing minion with him, using up his Divine Shield and doing 6 damage to kill something, and then just keep playing cheap mechs. So you could use... He's an interesting way to support a mech rush deck that's using all kinds of cheap, good, neutral mechs. And then he's like the hammer that comes in afterwards. And then you keep, every time you draw a cheap mech, instead of being like, I have 7 mana and I just drew a 2-cost minion, that sucks. Well, if this guy was out there, then every cheapo mech you draw is another Divine Shield that lets him kill something, or just stay alive. So he's very interesting that way. I don't know that I like him that much, but in theory he could be pretty good. The Quartermaster here is pretty cool. He's a 2/5 for 5 battle cry. Just give all your Silverhand recruits +2/+2. That's your 1/1s from your hero ability, but also from muster for battle. I mean, that would be an 8 mana combo to put out an army of 3/3s, which isn't as impressive as it sounds. It's more just that he always works okay. Like, you should easily be able to have out at least one guy. As long as you have one guy out, you're getting 4/7 worth of stats for 5 mana. And and there's a good chance that you had a 1/1 out there that can attack, which is now a 3/3 that can attack right away. So he's pretty cool. In the priest stuff, man, they have crazy things. So it looks like they have one more card than everyone else. That's actually just because I happened to get a gold Light of Naru in my pack. But yeah, this thing, it costs the same as a Light Warden, except it does something and then gives you a Light Warden mostly. It restores 3 health to anything. You can use this to heal a minion, but it's got kind of a weird incentive basis because you want to use it to heal a minion, but not to full. Or very likely you're going to use it on yourself, because if you heal yourself, you're not going to get healed to full. And as long as whatever you heal with this is still damaged, you get a free Light Warden out of the deal. That's the 1/2 that gets +2 attack whenever you heal something. I'm assuming the timing is such that it doesn't buff that Light Warden right away. That would be kind of silly. But, I mean, you should almost always be able to just heal yourself for 3 and get a Light Warden, if that's what you want. If you can make it work out otherwise, it'd be interesting. I don't know if this still triggers. Like, I would suspect this might work with the, like, shadow form type stuff. When your healing is doing damage, I would not be surprised if this would still trigger. So you get out your Akanai Soul Priest, you spend 1 mana, do 3 damage to something, and get a free Light Warden. Now, the Light Warden, I don't think it triggers off the negative healing, but I don't know, it actually gets confusing. They have the Shadow Bomber, which is kind of interesting. It's a very Warlocky sort of card at first glance, right? A 2/1 for 1, deals 3 damage to each hero. That's some pretty good, like, rush power for a priest. It has the advantage that you're assuming the priest over the course of the game can heal yourself more than your opponent usually. So that rushing them down should be more to your advantage. Certainly against a warlock it would be pretty obnoxious. But you also have to look at this plus Light of the Naru. If you take even 1 damage anywhere else, you could Shadow Bomber, and then you could Light of the Naru and get that other guy, and that could potentially be pretty rushy. Now, because they are the same amount, it starts getting quirky. I mean, you taking damage elsewhere, it might be hard. You're better off going with the Shadow Boxer, who is a death machine. He's like the evil version of the Northshire Cleric. Actually, the Northshire Cleric is the evil version of the Northshire Cleric, but whatever. He's the aggressive version of the Northshire Cleric. Whenever a character is healed, when anyone, anywhere receives healing that they need, obviously, if they're not damaged, it's not going to trigger. But otherwise, he knife throwers your opponent. He deals 1 damage to a random enemy, so it can't backfire. This can do some crazy things when you get the AoE healing going on. If you could get everything to take damage somehow, and then Holy Nova or healing or Circle of Healing. Circle of Healing would be confusing because I'm pretty sure this guy is going to go each and every thing, right? One thing gets healed, Shadow Boxer triggers. Next thing gets healed, Shadow Boxer triggers. But then you don't know what order it's going to hit things in and what order the Circle of Healing is going to go off, but it works well with Holy Nova anyway. He just worked well, period. He's a 2/3 for 2. And your opponent's going to want to kill him because he could potentially mess them up. The Shrinkmeister we've seen him used. He's actually pretty powerful because he's a priest guy. Because the way he interacts with the priest's less than 3, less than 2 attack cards. So with the Shrinkmeister and the Cabal Priest only steals creatures that have an attack of 2 or less. Well, now you could spend an extra 2 mana, Shrinkmeister something with 4 attack and steal that. You could also use it with Kodo to just blow up something that had 4 attack. Although the Kodo is random, you're going to have to manage the situation a little bit more. But that's some synergy, potentially. And, of course, he lets you Shadow Madness things with 5 attack. Sweet. I mean, you're stealing it because you reduce its attack to 3. That also means you can only use it to do 3 damage to something else. But it opens up more plays for your Shadow Madness, which was already good. Velen's Chosen is really... that's one of those things that's kind of standout. It's very interesting, because it's an El Cheapo Blessing of Kings, right? You pay 1 less than Blessing of Kings, you get 2 less attack, but you get a point of spell damage. In the constructed... like, in the arena, that spell damage, it didn't work out for me. It could work out crazy, but I mean, it's harder to make it all work. In Constructed, that spell damage is going to be awesome. And meanwhile, in any format, priests like having tougher minions, because it just gives you more chance to keep them alive. If you go Shadow Boxer, Velen's Chosen, that is a 4/7 that hits things, and then later when you heal it, it's doing extra damage for free. It's craziness. So this is very good. The upgraded Repair Bot, I don't know. A lot of people have said it's garbagey because you compare him to, Priest has a 6/6 for 6 who gives +3 health to anything. This guy gives +4 health and he costs less. But he's proportional for his mana cost, and he only gives the health to mechs. On the other hand, being a mech is itself good, so you can work around that. Like, he's interesting, not really exciting. The Legend Vol'jin is pretty sweet. I mean, he's not like the world's greatest exactly, but he's not a 6/2 for 5. He's a 6, your opponent's best minion's health for 5, and he, by the way, replaces that minion's health with 2. So you play him, reduce the health of some enemy minion to 2, and steal that minion's health in his place. That can only be beneficial. Rarely are you going to be unhappy to see him in your hand. Again, he's not like a complete game winner necessarily, but he's pretty darn good. If they put out a Molten, and then you play him, turn their Molten into an 8/2, and you're getting a 6/8, I'm sure you can do something with that. But this card that got pushed back a page because of my gold one, this is the thing. This is the closest that we've seen, in my opinion, this is the closest we've seen to Magic the Gathering Wrath of God. Not only is it a white card, which is more like, which is a specious comparison, because the colors in Magic have very little to do with the classes in World of Warcraft or Hearthstone, but it just feels more like it because it happens to be the white class. But no, this thing, for 6 mana, this is a potential full board wipe. It's not always going to work out as perfectly as that, because it's only obliterating creatures that have attack equal to or greater than their hit points. If you can't read it on my screen, 6 mana, deal damage to each minion equal to that minion's attack. This means every minion that has attack and defense the same dies. Every minion that has a higher attack than defense dies. Priests already like things that are tougher, and you have healing to try and manipulate it in your favor. And even the things that don't die just took a buttload of damage. And then you can, like, Holy Nova, and, well, they did rig the mana cost, so you can't play this and Holy Nova in the same turn, because that would be sick. Because all your guys who survived would get healed for 2, and your opposing minions would almost certainly all be dead. Everything that had attack, like, 2 less than his defense would still be dead. That would be rough. So that's why you definitely can't get this for less than 6 mana. But even for 6 mana, this is such a powerful board sweeper. I would much rather have this in my deck than the Warlock one, which is 8 mana and just kills everything. Because this is much easier to control in your favor and is much cheaper. It's all around. This is a fantastic card. So my voice is wearing out already. I'm sure this video has gone on way long enough. I will get to the next 4 classes probably the next time I screw up like this, and then there are also the neutral cards, of which there are very many for the new Goblins vs. Gnomes expansion. So somebody wanted to know what I think about some of the cards, and we'll get through them eventually. Maybe even next time. If you found that useful or entertaining, or if you enjoy cookies, hit the like button. And check out Tales from My D&D Campaign on youtube.com/demonac.